Okay, so you have this big blank box at the top because I want you to write in this rule. The rule is whenever you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality, by a negative number, then you must flip the sign. So what that means is if you were to start out with something like, I don't know, how about negative 3x is less than 9. So to get the x by itself, we're going to divide by negative 3. So when we divide, let me switch my color here real quick. So when we divide by negative 3 on both sides, you still have x, and 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3, but the sign must point the opposite direction. So this inequality symbol is not less than, now it is greater than. That's what we mean by you must flip the sign. So let's do some practice. All right, on example 1a, we're trying to get x by itself. So this is just like when it had an equal sign. The only difference is multiplying or dividing by a negative, you must flip the sign. So I'm going to add 6 to isolate the variable, meaning get x by itself. So I get x is, and then the sign stays the same because I was just adding, greater than or equal to negative 4. Now I also want you to graph the solution. So you're going to put a number line, and I'm not too picky on my number lines. I just like you to have 3 numbers or more on them. So now, because it is a greater than or equal to symbol, I'm going to do a closed circle. If it was a greater than symbol, I would do an open circle. So I do a closed circle at negative 4, and then I decide which way the arrow must point. So greater than means numbers are getting bigger, and numbers get bigger as you go to the right on the number line. So my line will point to the right. All right, let's try another one. Y plus 8 is less than or equal to 5. So we're going to subtract the 8 from both sides. So now you get y, you still have less than or equal to, and 5 minus 8 is negative 3. All right, so to graph this, would I have an open circle or a closed circle at negative 3? All right, I should have a closed circle because less than or equal to. Now, would it point towards the left or towards the right? Okay, it would point to the left because less than means the numbers are getting smaller, and the numbers get smaller as you move to the left on the number line. Let's look at example 1c. So to get x by itself, I divide by 6. Now, I'm dividing by positive 6, so I don't flip the sign. You only flip the sign when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So I have x is less than 5. So I'm just going to put on my number line 4, 5, and 6. The circle goes about the 5. It is open because less than is an open circle, and it points towards the left. All right, over here on D, we have x divided by 8 is greater than negative 5. So to move the 8, the inverse of dividing is multiplying. So we're going to multiply both sides by 8. So I get x is greater than negative 40. All right, so when I do that, let me see here. I'm just going to go by tens maybe, negative 50, negative 40, negative 30. You don't always have to go by ones. You can though. It's an open circle at negative 40 because greater than is open, and it's then going to point to the right because as you go to the right on the number line, the numbers get bigger. All right, I want you to try E. Go ahead and solve to find what B would be. Okay, so I would multiply times negative 2. So I get B, and then over here it's negative 16. But you must flip the sign because you multiplied by a negative number on both sides. So it now is less than or equal to negative 16. So when we were to put that on a number line, I would have a closed circle, and it would point towards the left. Let's go ahead and try H. All right, so you divide by negative 5. So you'd have x, and over here you'd have -2. Now you must flip the sign because you divided by a negative number. So that would change to greater than. So when we graph it, we'd have an open circle above -2, and it would point to the right. All right, let's look at a word problem together. So it says a circuit overloads at 1800 watts of electricity. So basically it's like when your breaker pops in your house. So at 1800 watts of electricity, it overloads. You plug a microwave oven that uses 1100 watts of electricity into the circle. It wants you to write and solve an inequality that represents how many watts you can add to the circuit without overloading it. Well, you already have 1100. Plus, I'm going to do W. Now let me go ahead and define my variable. W is going to be the number of watts you add. So you add to the circle. So 1100 plus W. Now think about this. It overloads at 1800. So if it hits 1800 watts, it's going to flip. If it's more than 1800 watts, it's going to flip. So it has to be less than, not less than or equal to, because at 1800 it flips. So everything under 1800. So that's my inequality. And then to solve, I would subtract the 1100 from both sides, and I would find out that W is less than 700. So now in part B, it says, in addition to the microwave oven, which of the appliances can you also plug into the circuit? So we look at this chart up here. We could actually plug in the clock radio, the blender, and the toaster all at the same time, and it would not be more than the 700 watts I'm limited by in part A. So I'm going to say all of them except the hot plate. The hot plate is more than 700 watts, so if we plugged in the hot plate, it would overload our breaker. All right, on 3A, it says you earn $9.50 per hour at your summer job. Write and solve an inequality that represents the number of hours you need to work to buy a digital camera that costs $247. So first of all, my variable is going to be H, and it's the number of hours worked. So we go ahead and write that down. So now how you make money, it's $9.50 per hour. So $9.50 times however many hours you work, so times H. Now, if you want to buy a digital camera that costs $247, that means you could have exactly $247 and the store would be okay with it. You could have more than $247, but you can't have less than, because if you said, hey, I only have $200, they're not going to be able to sell it to you. So it's $247 or more, that's greater than or equal to. All right, so then to solve, all we would do is just divide by 950. So you have 247 divided by 9.5. I typed that on my calculator. And I find out that H is greater than or equal to 26. So that means you have to work 26 hours or more to be able to buy that digital camera. All right, B says you have at most $3.65 to make copies. Each copy costs 25 cents. Write and solve an inequality that represents the number of copies you make. So I'm going to have C be our variable, and it represents the number of copies. All right, I want you to go ahead and try to write an inequality representing this situation. Okay, so our inequality would be 0.25 times C, so that's how much the copies cost. So you can spend at most $3.65. That means you can spend $3.65 or less. So you can spend the amount or you can have extra money left over. So it's less than or equal to. So that's our inequality. So now to solve, we would just do 365 divided by 0.25, and I find out that C is less than or equal to 14.6. You can't make 0.6 of a copy, so you can basically make 14 copies or less and still stay at your $3.65 limit.